Let's take a look at 5 of the top builds in Survivor.io. We will go over 5 different builds that mostly contain Voidwaker Treads, and I want to explain why. At a legend grade, Voidwaker Treads can increase your damage depending on the movement speed of you and your target. The faster you are compared to your target, the more damage you can potentially deal. As you see, they have the Predator skill, increases proportionate damage against enemies with lower movement speed than you, and this can max out at 50%. We're also going to mention the Twisting Belt a lot. It can make your damage percentage fluctuate between low and high numbers. The excellent skill called Energy Flux. All your skills will deal between 80% and 150% damage. So your damage is going to fluctuate between these numbers. At a legendary grade, you can increase this by 10%. And at an Astroforge 3, you can increase this by 20% more. But if you don't have the Twisting Belt, even at an excellent grade, then this brings us to our first build, the Waist Sensor build. The Waist Sensor can increase your movement speed when your HP is above 50%, which can then help you increase your damage if you are wearing legend grade Voidwaker Treads. So a lot of people do use this build if they don't have the Twisting Belt and do have legendary Voidwaker Treads. If you want to fill up the rest of the equipment in this build, well, you have some options. Here's something I like to call the standard build, and it's useful in just about any situation in the game. It consists mostly of eternal gear aside from the Twisting Belt and Voidwaker Treads, and you can use your preferred weapon depending on the scenario. We have the Eternal Necklace, Eternal Gloves, the Eternal Suit, the Twisting Belt, and Voidwaker Treads. This is a really good build in stages and in Ender's Echo with the Sword of Disorder or the Kunai. But if you're not afraid to drop your HP in Ender's Echo to increase your damage and crit rate, then check out this next build. Here's an Ender's Echo build. It's the same thing as the standard build, except it has the Voidwaker Emblem. You might find yourself getting more damage in Ender's Echo and against bosses if you use the Voidwaker Emblem instead of the Eternal Necklace, because once your HP is below 50%, you can get a damage, crit rate, and battle EXP boost depending on their grade and if they're forged or not. At an excellent grade, the lower your HP is, the higher your damage, and this will trigger below 50%. It will max out at 40% damage. At a red grade, the lower your HP is, the higher your crit rate, which also triggers below 50% HP and maxes out at 40%. With Astroforge 1, we have Fanatical, gain more battle EXP when HP is lower. And again, this will trigger below 50% and max out at 40%. This is what can help you get skills faster or level up your skills faster. We have the Eternal Suit, and once you die after revival, your attack and movement speed will both be increased by 15%. At a legend grade, you can get 2 revivals, and with Astroforge 3, you get the Machine Ascent skill, revive stats plus 5%. So dying right away in Ender's Echo can be very helpful. It can increase your movement speed, which again pairs with Voidwaker Treads, and you can increase your attack by a percentage. So a lot of people like to die twice right away as early as they can. If you're debating between the Sword of Disorder and the Kunai, you might want to try them both out and see which one is working for you. But I prefer the Sword of Disorder. It's going to increase all skill damage, and I just get more damage with it in Ender's Echo. The Kunai is still great. It's easier to level up. It's going to start out at level 2, and if you have it forged to Astroforge 3, you get the Ninja Master skill. Passive skill not required when leveling Kunai. So you don't need to find the Koga Ninja Scroll to evolve it. And if you're wondering who's better, Master Yang or King in Ender's Echo, it's going to be Master Yang. He gets the vote, even at 1 star. If you don't have Master Yang, go with King. If you don't have any of them, go with your strongest survivor. Even Common, he does have some pretty useful passive skills. Let's take a look at a very niche extreme challenge build that includes Red Shoes of Confusion. This build is used in extreme challenges against bosses, or it can be. As you see, it has a skill called Bounce Back at a legend grade. Your controls ignore the opposite direction, but you don't gain movement speed bonuses anymore. You are immune to death when in the opposite direction, and you gain a 50% damage boost. So if you take a fatal strike, you will not die and your damage will be increased by 50%. Last on the list, we have the infamous Deathwalker build. The Deathwalker build can make you invincible and increase your damage by a very hefty amount. This makes it great in stages and other game modes where the enemy is very difficult to defeat. However, this build should never be used in Ender's Echo, since the Eternal Suit can increase your damage and movement speed after revival, while while the armor of Quietus will not increase your damage unless you are in a soul state, pretty much dead. So what we have here is the armor of Quietus, and it has a skill called Death Word. The match doesn't end when the hero dies. The hero enters soul state for 10 seconds, during which the hero is invincible and unable to restore HP. The match is won if the final boss is defeated during this time. This really shines at a legend grade where we get Infernal Emissary. When you defeat monsters, instead of dying when the time is up, you can increase its duration, but you have to keep on killing monsters to continuously increase it. Also, as you see at an excellent grade, Oversoul Form, plus 30% attack when in soul state. Duration is also increased to 20 seconds. And at Astroforge 3, we get Lingering, so you can have a full 30-second period where you are immune, you are invincible, and you have an attack increase up to 50%. This goes well with the Sword of Disorder because if you have enemies shackled, you can increase your damage. Shackle. Enemies slain by Sword of Disorder will have their souls shackled. The more souls shackled, the higher the skill damage. At an excellent grade, the max is 30%, and this dissipates when you're hit. At a legend grade, only reduce 100 souls and whole screen takes high damage when souls dissipate. Damage is proportionate to number of souls. And at an Astroforge 3, we get Abyssal Horror, max shackle stats increase to 50%. So once you kill 100 enemies, you are going to get a skill damage increase. And this can go all the way up to 500, so you can get a 50% damage increase. And this is great because the armor of Quietus is going to make you invincible, where you will have 0 HP, which means the stats you get from shackled souls will be permanent. In addition, since you're essentially going to have 0 HP, the stats you can get from the Voidwaker Emblem will also be permanent. You can increase your damage, your crit rate, and of course, battle EXP gain. Some people like to use Eternal Gloves. They can increase your crit damage by 100%, which is insane. And some people like to use Voidwaker Handguards. They can insta-kill non-boss enemies. They can also increase your damage against elites and bosses. They also have a skill down here. Enemies in a certain radius will gradually wither. But if you get these to Astroforge 3, you get the Lord of Destruction skill. Insta-kill bosses with HP below 10%. So you can insta-kill bosses here. I know these builds mostly consist of S-grade equipment, and they may not be possible for everyone to make, but these can be items that you strive to get in the game. Essentially, a goal you can complete to dominate in Survivor.io. Thanks for watching. Smash like and subscribe, and if you want to share a build, maybe we can put it in a future video. Let's hear it in the comments below.